Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Rei-Lin, and today I'm going to be talking about the Outlaw Rogue once again from World of Warcraft, Legion. Decided I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about the rating spec for the Outlaw Rogue and just give you some pointers and basically just point out the talents that you should be taking to maximize your DPS, as well as the path you should take for your artifact weapon to maximize your damage that way and get the most out of your points as you go along to maxing out your artifact weapon. So overall, the Outlaw Rogue is still doing really well in raids, single target, multi-target. Pretty much after my last video, about 3 days later, they did give Outlaw Rogues a slight nerf, and they buffed Assassination Rogues and Subtlety Rogues by a little bit. And overall, all three specs are now very close when it comes to single target. At higher gear levels, Subtlety tends to barely eke out over all the other two specs, including the Outlaw. But I mean, we're not talking a lot of damage here. You're talking less than 1% between them. And Subtlety Rogues are generally more technical to keep the rotation going, and just overall it's a little bit harder spec to play. So of course they get slightly better damage for being a slightly more technical specialization. But focusing on the Outlaw, it's still pretty simple to play the Outlaw Rogue. It doesn't require a whole lot when it comes to player interaction. There are a few skills that you need to time like any other class, but more or less, most of what makes the Outlaw Rogue good or bad, of course, is Roll the Bones, the self buff that allows you to get up to 6 different buffs that improve your damage overall and just quality of life, especially in raiding. And that tends to be what makes your DPS fluctuate the most when it comes to doing any kind of damage in a raid setting. So with that being said, let's take a look at the raiding talents that you want to take. I'm still on my talents for just general playing around for me, but we'll switch it up here and we'll go right off the bat with Ghostly Strike. This is a strike that doesn't do that much damage, but it increases the damage that the target you're hitting takes by 10% for 15 seconds, and it gives you 1 combo point. You need to be able to keep this up no matter what. So just before that 15 seconds expires, you need to use another Ghostly Strike. You're going to have to bob and weave this into your rotation and make sure that you don't let it drop off. This is kind of an important buff. This is one of those things, again, that's just putting Outlaw just a little bit ahead of every other spec, just because, well, it's a 10% increased damage from everything you're doing, and it gives you a combo point. It does a little bit of damage. If it's a movement fight, if you're not going to be able to stay on the target all the time, then if this buff is going to fall off constantly, you may want to switch it over to Quick Draw. It's a slight DPS loss, but not enough to warrant not taking this. Swordmaster is not really that good. It is good if you also pair it with one of your Roll the Bones buffs, which increases Saber Slash's chance to go off by 25%, so this would make it another 10% on top of that, plus the natural 35% chance that it has to go off, as you can see down here. So quite a bit. But overall, Ghostly Strike is what you're going to go with most of the time. Moving down to this tier, Acrobatic Strikes is generally really good because it increases the range on all your melee attacks by 3 yards. This includes Blade Flurry. So in heavy AoE type situations where you're going to be hitting multiple things, and obviously you're going to have Blade Flurry on to do that, you're going to want that extra range because it allows that to hit more targets. It also will put you out of harm's way for some boss mechanics so that you could stand further away from a boss and still be able to hit that boss and avoid some of the AoE or direct damage for being right up on the boss's ass. So this is a pretty good talent to take for most situations. But if you're going to be moving and needing to move quite a bit to stay on your targets, especially if you're taking Ghostly Strike, Grappling Hook is also pretty damn good for a movement ability besides your sprint, so you can toggle between sprint and grappling hook as movement. Hit and run is okay, but it's generally you're not going to use it. The extra 15% just really isn't enough. If you need to move, grappling hook and sprint is more than enough in most of the raids that I've been in. So hit and run, you're not really using it for much at all. If they would buff this to more like a 25%, 30%, but then again, you know, it'd probably be way too good then. Moving on, deeper stratagem. This is the one you're going to want to have for pretty much all the content. The other two, anticipation, it just doesn't do the damage. It doesn't give you anything extra. And vigor is nice. It helps with your rotations a little bit because that extra 50 energy and the extra energy regeneration is always nice no matter what. That's always nice. But I've generally just gotten used to having deeper stratagem. So it gives you a maximum of 6 combo points, as you can see up here, and increases the damage of all of your finishing moves by 10%. More damage, higher damage in the raid, faster stuff dies. Very, very useful. So take deeper stratagem. Moving down here, this kind of comes down to personal preference between elusiveness and cheat death. Iron Stomach is good if you're not raiding. You're pretty much going to be dependent on your healers. And while Iron Stomach is okay if you've got a lot of passive AoE, just like maybe you get a dot that slowly stacks up and you can use this to kind of negate a little bit of that damage, it's really not enough because of the cooldown. And you're going to have raid healers. You know, you should not be dying to something that's periodic damage. This is really good for world content, though. As you can see, I always take it for that. But you also have these two here, which are a lot better. Elusiveness, it turns your feint into a 30% damage reduction from everything for 5 seconds. And it also, just feint by itself, gives you 50% less damage that you take from AoEs. So if you take elusiveness, you've got a lot of damage mitigation on a 20, basically a 20 energy, 5 second shield, essentially, is all that gives you with feint. This is good, but the problem with this, it's only for 5 seconds. So you really have to know the encounter, and you have to know that the damage is about to be hitting you to make this useful. Otherwise, you'd just be wasting it and wasting your energy. And if you're wasting energy on feint too much, you're not going to have the energy to be doing a lot of damage. So this is more like one of those high skill cap kind of talents. Cheat Death, on the other hand, is entirely passive. It basically keeps you from dying once every 2 minutes. It reduces you to 7% of your maximum health, and for 3 seconds you take 85% reduced damage. This is a oops, I stood in something, or I didn't kick something that I should have kicked. This is just a fail-safe, once every 2 minutes, get out of jail free card. Overall, I'd probably go with elusiveness just because it doesn't really have the 2 minute warning, and it's just generally, it's a damage reduction that you can use as long as you have 20 energy and for 5 seconds you're going to take a lot less damage. So if you get into a critical situation and cheat death is down, you're probably going to die, whereas elusiveness might just save your life. Moving on, parlay, it's basically a blind on a shorter cooldown, but it's useless in raids, so you're not going to take parlay at all, so just ignore that. Prey on the weak and dirty tricks. Prey on the weak, enemies that you disable with your blind, gouge, sheep shot, or sap take 10% increased damage from all sources. This is good if you're trying to get a high priority ad down really quick. This allows you to vanish and then cheap shot it, and then it's going to take 10% more damage from everyone else in your raid, which can be, you know, the difference between getting the ad down really quick and easy and it wandering around mowing people down. So that is useful in situations like that. Dirty tricks, basically it turns your gouge, blind, and cheap shot and sap into costing no energy when you use them. So that means you can sort of use your blind whenever you need to control an ad. Your cheap shot's no longer going to increase the damage, but you can use it and then you can go right into doing a lot of damage for the 5 seconds it lasts. Gouge will become more like an interrupt. Since it doesn't take any energy, you just pop it and you'll knock something like a caster or something out of, you'll just interrupt the attack and gouge them. But keep in mind that this isn't really helping your raid. This is sort of being a little bit selfish for yourself, but it still allows you to do some damage because now you're no longer worried about an energy cost associated with any of those attacks. I'd probably go with Prey on the Weak just because overall I think Prey on the Weak gives you the best synergy with the rest of your raid group. Moving on down, Alacrity. That's the main thing you're going to take is Alacrity. And basically, your finishing moves have a 20% chance per combo point to grant you 1% haste. It stacks to 20 times, so that you would have a 20% haste buff pretty much as long as you can stay on the target. Again, this still comes down to similar to Ghostly Strike. If you can stay on the boss for long enough, you can let this stack, and it will stack very, very quickly, and that will give you permanent haste buff. And haste is good. The more that you can attack, the faster you attack, the more energy you're going to get back from your offhand main gouge, and so Alacrity is very good. Cannonball Barrage is still okay because it's an AoE. It does quite a bit of damage, and it's only a 1 minute cooldown, and it does slow enemies for 1.5 seconds, but that generally isn't that big a deal in a raid. But another thing is, this is a 35-yard range, so even if you're out of range, you get rooted or whatever, and you need to drop some damage on the boss or some adds and slow them down, maybe get them off your healer, Cannonball Barrage is good. Killing Spree, the worst part about Killing Spree is that you're no longer invincible while you're doing it. There are bosses that have like damage going on and you don't really want to be there, and if this is up, you're going to want to use it because it is a 2-minute cooldown. It does a lot of damage, and for AoE packs, if you turn on Blade Flurry, it does bounce between pretty much everything there and does quite a bit of damage to multiple targets. There's nothing wrong with that. But because you're not invincible, if you were to draw aggro, or you would use this during a period of time where maybe you don't want to be close to a boss, maybe he's doing like an AoE, you're going to die in the middle of this. Like in the Eye of Azashara, for example, the end boss, if you jump down into him, his model, he actually does like a pulsing AoE around you. It hurts you. Killing Spree, using it on him, for example, you're teleporting right inside him. So the whole time you're slowly killing yourself while you are basically, you can't get out of it. You can't interrupt this unless you were to get stunned. And so basically you're going to be taking damage for 3 seconds that you would not normally take if you had either of the other two. So overall, I would take Alacrity if you know you're going to just be tanking spanking on a boss, and Cannonball Barrage if you know there's AoE phases, and this just helps you in conjunction with your Blade Flurry. One thing to keep in mind is, of course, that this is a 1 minute cooldown, and should you get the Roll the Bones buff, that every time you use a finisher, it takes time off of your skills. This is one of the skills that it will take time off of every time that you do use Run Through or Between the Eyes. It does with Killing Spree too, but it's double the cooldown. So after just a couple of finishers, Cannonball Barrage will be back up. So it's something to keep in mind. And finally, down here, Marked for Death. This is the main go-to raid useful talent to take. Again, a 1 minute cooldown, which of course will still be affected by your Roll the Bones buffs. You can get this up several times during a fight if you're using, if you get that buff. It marks the target and instantly gives you 5 combo points. If the target dies, it resets the cooldown instantly. So on fights that have some adds that die pretty quick, you can easily ramp up quite a bit of burst damage by just throwing this out, using a run through. They die, use it again, use a run through, and just keep doing that. Every time that the ad dies, the cooldown comes right back up, and you can use it again. It's great at the beginning of fights when you do your opener and you roll the bones. If you don't get a buff that's very useful, you can immediately Mark for Death again, roll the bones again. Hopefully by then you've got at least 1 or 2 good buffs. So it saves you a little bit of downtime and energy expenditure right off the bat. Again, it only gives you 5 combo points. Do keep that in mind. If you take Deeper Stratagem to get 6, you still don't get 6. It only gives you 5. Slice and Dice, if you really hate Roll the Bones and the RNG associated with it, and a lot of people do, you can take Slice and Dice instead, but you're going to lose about 15% overall damage. Your DPS is going to go quite a ways down for doing that, because even with the extra 100% attack speed, it just does not stand up to the buffs that you can get from Roll the Bones, unfortunately. This would probably have to be closer to like 150% speed or 200% speed before it would actually sort of match what Roll the Bones can give you. Death from Above, again, it comes down to, do you know the fight? Is there a lot of AoE? Are there a lot of adds that you're going to be taking down and need to be taken down quite often? It does 151,000 damage to everything around you, and then when you leap into the air and come back down, you're basically doing a run through that does 50% more damage. It's on a 20-second cooldown, however, so even once you have enough combo points to use it, you'll probably be waiting at least for a little bit for that cooldown. So, but overall, Marked for Death generally does the best, even with AoE, because you can already Blade Flurry if you need to start cleaving stuff, and this just gives you one hell of a opening burst on whatever that you're attacking. If it dies quick, and they usually do if they're ads, this will come right back up and you can do it again. So that is the talent build if you're a raiding rogue. And overall, I think it works really well. I've done a couple of the raids, only looking for raid, and my guild has done a few normal Emerald Nightmare so far. And even without having this as a spec, I still pretty much top the meters right behind a couple of the Demon Hunters. But this was also pre the nerf, so at this point I'm probably a little bit closer gear-wise, and with the nerf to the Demon Hunters, I believe I would probably be close, if not beating them at this point. Now let's take a look real quick at the path for your Dreadblades. There isn't kind of an optimal path that you need to take, or we suggest, or I suggest anyway that you take to get the most out of the points you're going to spend. It's going to take you a long time to max out and get all of your skills in this thing. It takes quite a while, 34 points just to get to the break point where then you can just start adding in the damage. And so it's a big commitment. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of grinding to get this up to where you want it. And of course you're going to start off with automatically Curse of the Dreadblades. Once you've got Curse of the Dreadblades, your first point automatically goes into Cursed Edges, increases the damage dealt by Saber Slash by 15%. Then you're going to want to go up to here to get Fate's Thirst, increases the damage dealt by Run Through. At this rank I've got by 24%. Run Through is your main finisher. You're going to use it all the time. The more damage you can get out of it, the better. You move down to Fatebringer, reduces the energy cost of finishing moves by 9. This was a little bit higher, and this was one of the talents that did get nerfed, so it's not quite as powerful as it was. But reducing your energy cost by 9, it's not bad. I mean, you can see Run Through is 26 energy, and Between the Ice is 26 energy. So, add 9 more energy to this. So it was quite a bit. It was 35 energy. Now it's 26. So it allows you to have a little bit better control over your rotation and energy expenditure. Then you're going to move on down to Ghostly Shell. This is actually really useful if there are places and bosses and ads that keep giving you a lot of crap, a lot of dots. Basically, when you turn on your Cloak of Shadows with this talent, it heals you for 6% of your maximum health for every effect that it clears. So you'd get, 12% if you had 2. So, I mean, it's a fairly significant buff. But what is nice also about it is for the few seconds that Cloak of Shadows lasts, which is 5, if you're fighting something that you can resist the spells, if it's a caster that's doing a lot of fast-firing things, while this is up and you're just resisting all those spells, it's also healing you for 6% for every single spell that you resist. I went from nearly dead to back to full health fighting casters that do a rapid-fire attack over that 5 seconds. It was amazing. And there are actually AoEs you can stand in that a boss will put down, and you can go pop your Cloak of Shadows when you're low on health, stand in the AoE. That AoE will tick every second, and since you're resisting it, it just heals you right back up to full. It's a really nice talent, and I'm surprised that it's more like a minor talent than anything else. But this is kind of nice. This is what you want to go for. Your first golden dragon is Greed. You have a chance on hit that the Dreadblades basically do a pulse AoE around you. It does 113,000 damage and heals you for 91,000 damage for every target that you hit. So this kind of gives you a little bit of a buffer. It's very useful. The more ads, obviously, that you hit, the more you heal. But just having it do that in and of itself, the only downside to this is you might get into trouble hitting multiple ads that you don't really want to hit. Something might be sapped or blinded, and this will just damage them and wake them up. So you have to be kind of conscious of where you're standing if there's some sort of crowd control going on. You don't want to bust the crowd control. But once you've made this path first, you're going to come back to Fatebringer and go down to Hidden Blade. This is really useful for your opener. It is so helpful with the opener because Outlaw Rogue only has 100 energy. The energy regen isn't that fast, but basically every time you ambush, and you're probably going to ambush more than anything else, your next Saber Slash will strike an additional time. It guarantees that the very next Saber Slash that you do gives you 2 combo points. So you're going to open, you can get 1, maybe 2 if it crits. Saber Slash is going to double hit. If it all crits, you'll have 5. And then because it double hit, you get the free pistol shot. And so that gives you maximum combo points pretty much every single time you open on something. Very, very useful. Going to move up to Blade Dancer. Your energy regen is reduced by 10% less while Blade Flurry is active. Yes, turning on Blade Flurry screws up your energy regen. Energy regeneration is reduced. With that skill, it goes down by 10%. Normally it's 20%. So this is a huge increase in your damage because now you're not stuck waiting forever for your energy to regen enough to actually keep DPSing. Then you're going to move over to Fortune Strikes. Your combat potency generates 4 additional energy. Combat potency is just a chance for your offhand to give you energy. And if you go into your skills and you go over here, you can look right here. Your offhand attacks have a chance to generate 19 energy. So it's a small chance. It's not that great of a chance for it to actually go off, but this generates an extra bit of energy for you, which is really good. Now, you're not going to continue down this line yet. You're going to back up to Fate's Thirst and go up to Gunslinger. This increases the critical strike chance at pistol shot by 18%. That's kind of nice. I mean, pistol shot doesn't do that much damage, but adding this extra 18% does give it a little bit of a punch, especially when it does a critical hit. So this is more or less just sort of like a filler as you move on over here. Towards this is what we're ultimately going for. Next, you're going to take Deception. Activating Sprint causes Feint to activate for no energy cost. Might be situationally useful. I kind of wouldn't want to use my Sprint and then have to Feint, just because you want to save your movement abilities for times when you really need to use it. But I guess in an emergency, if you had no energy and you really needed to reduce the damage you're about to take, it could be useful. Then you're going to now go down the line here to Fortune Strike. Increases the damage dealt by main gouge by 10%. That's just the free offhand hit that you do with a small chance on hit. So increasing that damage with the 3, it should be about 30%, is pretty crazy. I mean, that's really nice. It's just automatic. It's passive. Again, more damage. Then you're going to get over here to Blunderbuss. The passive is a passive skill. You don't have to think about it, but Saber Slash strikes an additional time. Every time it does, there's a 33% chance that instead of pistol shot coming up, it will automatically replaced with a blunderbuss shot. And basically what blunderbuss is pistol shot that does about 3 times more damage, and it gives you the 1 combo point. So basically it's just a more powerful pistol shot. And since pistol shot is free every time you double hit with Saber Slash, you're probably not even going to notice. You're going to use pistol shot whether it turns into blunderbuss or not, but at least it's adding even more damage to where you already are. Now you have a different path here you can take. Now you can go from Deception and go this way, but I would suggest going from Fortune Strikes and go to Black Powder. It increases the damage dealt by Between the Eyes by 6%. Between the Eyes is your ranged kidney shot. You're not really going to use this that often. It does do 4 times normal damage on a crit, so that's really useful. But most of the time, Between the Eyes is useless in a raid unless you can stun something. Generally, you can't stun a boss, so using this over run through is kind of a bad idea. Yes, it would do more damage than run through if it crits, but you can see it does, half the damage easily if it doesn't. But again, it's something that's passive. Just increasing the damage it does deal is always good. And then you're going to get up to Blurred Time. During an Adrenaline Rush, your ability cooldowns recover 15% faster. That's humongous. You already have Roll the Bones to give you a buff that will reduce your cooldowns, but this is, again, something that's passive, and if you're reducing your cooldowns with the buff from Roll the Bones, Adrenaline Rush is going to come up pretty quick, especially if you're going Adrenaline Rush and popping your Curse of the Dreadblades and doing the usual Saber Slash run through combo back and forth. It'll come up almost by the time you're done with the Dreadblades Curse. So, Blurred Time, 15% faster cooldown recovery, awesome. Overall, again, you're just getting everything back up and running, and it just makes everything go a little bit smoother for you. And then, of course, once you have those, you're going to move up to Blade Master. While Repost is active, you gain 1 combo point each time you parry an attack. Repost is your big defensive cooldown besides Vanish. I mean, if you get into a situation where stuff is beating on you, you'd pop this, and there you go. You'll gain 1 combo point for free without using any energy, and they'll take damage in return. So, pretty useful, if not situational. And then Fortune's Boon reduces the cooldown of Adrenaline Rush by 10 seconds. That'll put it down to 30 seconds less. So 2.5 minutes, basically, instead of 3 minutes. Always useful. Adrenaline Rush will then be able to synergize a little bit better with Curse of the Dreadblades. So overall, this kit is very useful, and the further along the lines you get, the more and more damage you can do. It just takes a little while, obviously, as most of the artifacts do. But that is the path that I would suggest. Start here and go around this way, and then go back over to here, then go up over to here, and then finish up here, and then here. And then after that, you're going to open up the next slot, which is just pure damage increases for every point that you put in it. And that overall is what the Outlaw Rogue is good at doing, and it does a lot of damage. But it takes a little bit of time to ramp up to that damage. It really needs a little bit of tender, loving care and a lot of points in your artifact weapon to get the Dreadblades up to where they're doing more passive things for you to help your energy regeneration, help your combo point generation, help your healing, just everything that the Dreadblades are doing with the talents that you're going in and putting in there. It's just a huge help to your damage. The talents that we're picking, again, here, like I said, there are a few that you can pick based on, the raid, the composition, what you need to do at that time for a particular boss or scenario. These can always move around, and things are always subject to change. But overall, I think that is going to do it for this video. I wanted to get that out there before I ended up on the road again and couldn't post videos. I wanted to make sure that I was giving people time enough that if they like the Outlaw Rogue enough that they got it up to level 110, started getting gear, and then they're thinking about raiding now that at least two of the wings in Emerald Nightmare is now open. So I wanted to make sure everyone got on the same page, was using a build that I find useful and that overall tends to be the top damage dealer for the raids and the raid spec. I wanted you guys to see a path that I think is really helped out for leveling and just everyday stuff, as well as raiding in the mythic dungeons and whatnot, so that you didn't end up wasting points going the wrong way when a lot of the stuff there on the left side of the weapon is pretty damn useful compared to the other side. So hopefully that has given you a little bit of insight. Hopefully that has helped you out, and if it did, please press the like button down below. It does help out my channel. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe, you can also click down the bottom of your screen right now, and that'll get you signed up every time I put up a new video. You'll get an email that says, hey, new video's up by me. A nice little gnome right in my way. Thanks, gnome. But overall, Outlaw is still very, very viable. They're still really damn good, and they get better as time goes on. They did get a slight nerf, but nowhere close to, the sky is falling. They're still very powerful and very fun to play. And of course, if you are lucky enough to get the drops to do the quest, you can get these remade Thunder Fury weapon skins for your Dreadblades, and I think this stuff looks pretty badass. And overall, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some use out of it. Take care out there, and I'll talk to you all next time.